confess to survive? Men are good, as are you. And no matter what you do, never apologize for something you did not do. Let me say that again. Never apologize for something you didn't do. Why? Why would that be important? Because if you apologize for something you didn't do, you are enabling the false accuser. Indeed, you're lying for the false accuser, and those things have immediate problems, as you can well imagine, and they also have a big problem downstream. Yeah, so apologies are important, and if you need to apologize for something, that's good, but if you feel like you didn't do something, do not apologize until you're sure of it. Anyway, let's talk about the Chinese brainwashing a little bit, and I know that seems like a strange jump, but hang in there. We'll connect the two dots in just a minute. The Chinese were experts at brainwashing people and probably still are. But Lipton wrote a book on this back in 1962, I think. And it's a fascinating book. I'd urge anybody to have a look at it, but we'll synopsis it real quick. Basically what Lipton said was that the Chinese would attack the identity of those people they wanted to brainwash. They'd attack the identity. There's something wrong with you. You're this and that. You're an imperialist. You're a problem. You create all the trouble in the whole world. La, 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 right? Over and over and over again. In fact, they'd have these large groups of people who would surround the person they're trying to brainwash. And they'd say things, the same kind of thing. You're the imperialist. You're the problem. You need to change. La, 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 right? And so, after a while, Lipton says, the Chinese would soften the identity of the person who they were trying to brainwash. Their identity would become softened. They'd no longer have a sense of their world and their view of the world as they knew it before. Somehow things started getting wobbly. They didn't know what was up and what was down, and they also were very unsure of who they were. And the more they would attack the identity, the more they would lose this sense of self. Until after a while, the sense of self would get what they call softened. It'd be softened enough for the Chinese to go in and say, you need to apologize. You need to apologize for being an imperialist, for causing all the trouble in the world. Can't you see? You're the imperialist. And people started to feel and understand that unless they apologized, they were never getting out of this mess. So they'd make a little apology. Well, I'm sorry that I did such and such. That's not good enough. It's not good enough. And the whole time, if anyone said to the Chinese, no, that's not right, you would be, you'd get severe punishment very, very quickly. So the Chinese were seen as infallible. You couldn't say anything to them that would contradict what they were trying to tell you, but you better say what they say to you. And finally, people start saying, yes, I am the imperialist. And the Chinese would start to soften a little bit, and they'd start to say, oh, good. And they'd give them a little bit of a dog biscuit, right, for doing that. And so people would say it more and more and more. And the Chinese knew that that was the point at which they didn't really have to push that hard anymore. Because once someone starts apologizing, what happens? Their whole identity crumbles. And their worldview crumbles, and they're left in this big mess because the dissonance inside is huge. Here they're saying, I am a certain way, but they know they're not a certain way, but they have to say they're a certain way, and after a while, this eats away at them. It eats away at them until they just don't know who they are anymore. They become an automaton for the ideology of the person who is trying to brainwash. Oh boy. The Chinese, once you start doing this, once you start apologizing, once you start confessing, in fact, the Lipton said something about, one of the key words for the Chinese was, if you want to survive, you must confess. You have to apologize if you're going to survive. So this is what took people along this road. Got to the point where they didn't know who they were anymore. In fact, the whole idea was that you go from having an identity to questioning that identity to thinking that you've done something wrong, and the end product of this identity bullshit is that you're not only done something wrong, you are wrong. You are wrong. You were born wrong. You are wrong. Just total wrong, right? And so people start living this existence of feeling as though they're not only not themselves, there's something wrong with them as a person. Shame and guilt to the max. To the max. What a mess, right? Well, this happens in more than one place. It's not just the Chinese doing this. Think about abusers, physical abusers. And the abuser smacks the person who's being abused, right? They smack them good. And then they convince them that it's their fault. It's your fault. And they need to apologize for being that way. Otherwise, they wouldn't smack them anymore, right? Same kind of dynamics happen. Same thing. And for our purposes, the same thing happens with feminism. Feminism basically has been attacking men's identity for decades. Over and over and over again. Men are pigs. Men are rapists. Men are greedy. Men are this. Men are that. And now we're on the toxic stuff. It's gotten to the point now where the feminists can relax a little bit because their hatred of men, their identity attacks have been taken up by the whole culture. Now the educational system tells men there's something wrong with them. The legislator tells men there's something wrong with them. Hollywood says it. The academia says it. Media says it. Every place you go, men are surrounded, right, by people telling them there's something wrong with you. There's something wrong with you. You need to apologize for being a man. And that's exactly what we see some of. It's so sad. You see these videos, on YouTube of men saying, I apologize for being a man. Oh, that's the same crap that's gone through, with the Chinese brainwashers. The whole thing about attacking the identity, forcing an apology, and then apologizing over and over again until you don't know who you are. You become an automaton to that ideology, right? Same kind of thing. It's very sad and it's very pernicious. Whatever you do, if you don't think you did something, don't apologize. Period. And now the saddest thing is that we're seeing at this point, it's white people who are being attacked. It's white people their identity is being attacked. There's something wrong with white people, right? For being born white. Just like there was something wrong with men for being born men. I mean, give it a rest, for crying out loud. That's crazy. But now it's white people. You're white. You're automatically a racist. You're automatically a problem. You've caused all the problems in the world. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people, particularly women, are not as resilient as men. Men for 50 years have been able to look at this attack on their identity and gone, I'm not so sure about that. I am who I am. Thank you very much. But boy, we see more people when it's whites that are being attacked. We see more people, both men and women, kowtowing to that. Just falling apart and saying, oh yes, I'm a white person. It's all my fault that the world fell apart. Well, guess what, folks? There is no one race that oppressed another race. It just doesn't happen like that. There are certainly people from this race or from that race or from whoever's race who did terrible things to a lot of people. We know that. But a whole race, blaming an entire birth group, that is the exact definition of racism, right? This is bigotry on steroids. And some people are applauding it. This is nutty. This is crazy. This is exactly why we cannot apologize for something we know we didn't do. And that's what we see in today's world. Sad as it is. So, if you are asked to apologize for something, look in your own heart for whether you did that or not. Talk to your friends. Talk to the people you trust. Talk to people and ask them, do I need to apologize for this? Is this something that I've done? And get some feedback first before you jump off the cliff. Because as soon as you start apologizing, there goes the identity. And as soon as your identity goes, then you're no longer a part of your own self. You become an automaton for whatever ideology is trying to push you into this space where you're just going to be a lemming for them. You're just going to do for them exactly what they want to do. And think about it. Feminism and the whole racial stuff today is one-sided. It's like they're infallible. You can't question them. You can't say anything to them. So you need to check it out with people you love and who love you. Anyway, that's probably a good place to stop. And men are good, as are you, and we'll see you around. Come to regardingmen.com. We're doing some interesting things out there. We'll see you. Bye-bye.